Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to get started in around about a minute's time. So yeah, we'll start in just about a minute. Thanks. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for taking the time to log in and join us here this morning. So today's session we'll be looking at how to simplify cloud backup for Azure and AWS environments, and just also more generally discussing sort of the cloud landscape, how that stands today, and how data protection needs to work in and around that. So just to introduce myself, my name is Russell Nolan. I'm one of the senior SEs here at Veeam, so part of the technical team. I'm also joined today by Liam from Think S3. So Liam will be giving you an introduction to Think S3 and what they do. Without further ado, well, in fact, just before we start, I should just probably point out a bit of housekeeping. There is a chat window. You would have probably noticed it when you logged into the GoToWebinar console. So that will be over on the right-hand side of your screen now. Please do feel free to type any questions you may have as we're running through the session today into there, and we'll keep sort of 5 or 10 minutes at the end of today's session just to run through some Q&A. So yeah, please do feel free. If you have any questions as we're going through, just chuck them into the chat window, and we'll come back to those at the end. So Liam, I guess over to you, my man.
Lovely, thank you very much, Russell. And yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm not going to take up much of your time. Obviously, we're here to learn about Veeam Cloud Connect and simplifying your backup into the cloud. Just to give you a quick overview and introduction to Think S3. If we could pop onto the next slide, please, Russell. There we go. So who are we? Think S3 are a hybrid infrastructure solutions and services specialists. We've been operating for 14 years now. We started out working with virtualization technologies way back when that was at the leading edge of technology, and we've maintained this level of change and pace, looking at technologies that support the data center, that support your business over the years, specializing in DR, backup, your storage solutions. We've had the pleasure of working with some really nice clients over that period of time. As you can see on the slide here, people like London Zoo and the ZSL Group, Oxford University, and the Eden Project are a couple that always stand out to me. So we work on a very consultative-led basis, and we like to make sure that what we're doing is we're coming in, we're understanding what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve, and how we help you get there. If we jump onto the next slide, please, Russell. So this gives you a little bit of an overview of the areas that we work within, some of the people that we work with to deliver these. I'm sure you'll recognise many of these names. They're people that we're all familiar with, such as VMware and Microsoft and Amazon, obviously Veeam, and people like NetApp and Nimble are supporting us on the storage side, helping us deliver this very rounded set of solutions that we can offer. And of course, we wrap that all up with some managed services to make sure you get all the support that you need. Next slide, please, Russell. So just to give you a bit of an overview, so we're a consultancy-led business. This really is what we do, especially for people, is help them understand where they're coming from, help deliver a level of strategy confidence for them by going through this little process that we run, which allows us to really get an understanding of the business case that you're looking for, run an assessment around that so we can really get to what the truth of the matter is, on how we can help make solution design for you, put together some ideas and work with you on those. And then typically what we'll do out of those workshops is deliver a proof of concept and make sure that we've got everything tied up and right. So it's delivering on the promises that we're making and achieving the business goals and solving the pains that you have. Obviously we monitor and maintain that with our clients, and we like to keep a good relationship to deliver that for you. Next slide, please, Russell. And I mentioned our support services there. This is just a brief sort of view, just to give you an idea of how we work. So we're not one of these consultants that want to come in, just pick up and deliver a single project. We look to maintain that, and we offer a whole deal of services that allow us to look after some of those, sort of those day-to-day bits that maybe you don't want to be spending time on, such as backup testing and DR. Recovery tests. We understand that these things need to be done and monitored, but they can pull you away from doing the really wonderful work that you're doing in your businesses and helping them innovate and achieve their areas. So we can pick up a lot of that, and we have a really good support team in the business. We're very much led by the consultancy and led by the technicians. So we'd like to offer this one-stop service with defined SLAs to make sure that you're achieving what you want. And it's been tried and tested over 14 years, and it's led to us working with say some lovely clients and some really good partners such as Veeam. So I don't want to take up much more of your time. If we can move on to the next slide, please.
Great. Okay, back over to me then. So thanks very much for that, Liam. Great overview there of what Think S3 can do for you guys, a very trusted partner of ours here at Veeam. But for those of you that may not have come across Veeam before, it's probably worth me just taking a moment to introduce you to the company. So we're a global software company founded back in 2006. So, as technology companies go, that actually makes us kind of established these days. Celebrated our 10th birthday last year, and it's fair to say we've grown at quite a rate over that 10-year period, to the point where today we have over 2,700 employees all around the globe and over 242,000 customers, and that number's growing all the time. In fact, we've been signing up about 4,000 net new customers each and every month, quite consistently now, for coming on 2 years. So yeah, it shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. Now, we believe that's because here at Veeam, we talk a lot more about availability than we do backup. And that's really just because the product does a lot more than just backup. Yes, you can do that. You can back up your virtual machines, your physical machines, you can recover files, application items, and all of that good stuff. But the product also enables you to replicate and fail over. So at that point, you could consider it more of a sort of business continuity solution. And that's built in. It's not licensed separately. When you buy Veeam Backup and Replication, you get both backup and replication straight out of the box. So yeah, we focus a lot more on availability. Now, in terms of what it is that we're trying to make available, you'll know yourselves, it's a very, very interesting time in IT at the moment. Cloud is really starting to gain traction. It's something that's been very hot topic for a good few years now. But it's fair to say, the take-up has been somewhat behind what the analysts predicted. But these days, it really certainly seems to be ramping up. So we're very keen as a company to lead the charge there. So we aim at making workloads available regardless of where they might be. So that could be in a private cloud or on premises. A lot of our customers will actually just replicate stuff between their own 2 sites. If they have 2 sites, makes sense to make use of those and kind of keep it in-house. But of course, you've also got the rise of managed cloud providers, guys like Think S3, who've taken the time to build a data center, put infrastructure inside of that, and then manage that and make it available to you on a more sort of OpEx model, typically. And that's been performing really well. I mean, if you look at the sort of numbers from our recent earnings announcement here at Veeam, the cloud part of the business is outperforming our own expectations by about 2 times. And there's a lot of cloud companies that wish they could say that about their services. Now, we're also finding that, you know, things like Office 365 are hugely popular with people. Let's face it, you know, cloud is quite a generic term, and it fits some things and it doesn't fit other things quite as well. But if you look at messaging, for example, email, it's an absolutely perfect fit to live in the cloud. It's an application that does things on a network, right? So we also protect workloads in Office 365. We have a promo on actually at the minute, so our backup for Office 365 tool is actually free to all existing and any new Veeam customers, provided they're signed up before the end of June. So you actually get a year's subscription to that for free. And then of course you've got your public clouds, your hyperscalers. You know, you'll be very familiar with the names in there, your Amazons, your Azures, you know, and those guys are going great guns. We work very closely with those as well. In fact, there's a few Veeam appliances available on the Azure marketplace, and they're consistently in the top 5 most popular appliances deployed from the Azure marketplace. So, you know, the aim is really here. We want to deliver a platform, Veeam Availability Platform, which will bridge all of those disparate areas where we might have workloads running. Now, a big part of that is the Veeam Availability Suite. That is Veeam Backup and Replication, which I mentioned already. That's our data protection solution, which is fair to say has kind of made our name out there in the market. But this year, we've got some exciting new things coming as well. So there are Veeam agents for Windows and Linux. In fact, the Linux one is available today. You can hop along to veeam.com and download that right now. But we're also just about to release the Veeam agent for Windows. That is due imminently. So any of you that are waiting for that, do keep checking back to the Veeam website in the next week. We're expecting that any day now. Of course, the Veeam Availability Orchestrator sits there in the middle. This is a product we've scheduled for release later this year. And this will just act as kind of an umbrella that will sit over and above our ability to failover and replicate and add some interesting new features. So I'll focus on VMware environments initially, with Hyper-V coming in a future release. But essentially that will automate a lot of the DR documentation process for you, and also enable you to encompass more workloads in that failover scenario. So that's really the Veeam vision as it stands today, is to just, you know, continue to protect workloads that are on premises, but also have a very strong focus on the workloads that are increasingly being put out into the cloud. Now, of course, you know, the hyperscalers, we alluded to those there, the big guys, right? They're very well known out in the market, but I mean, these two alone account for most of the market share as it stands today. But they present challenges. So, you know, cloud-based VMs are brilliant because, you know, you can deploy them nice and quickly, nice and easily. You don't need to put any infrastructure in place to get them up and running. But typically, you don't have hypervisor access in those environments. Now, those of you that have been watching the tech press will know that, you know, the guys at Amazon are working with VMware to change this. So it is an evolving story. But certainly, as it stands today, the default model for hyperscalers is to just provide you with the VM as a service, so you don't get access to the infrastructure underneath. That means you can't protect those workloads in an intelligent way, and by intelligent, I mean taking snapshots of the virtual machine, much like you would do if that virtual machine was running in your own environment. You know, people don't use the agent-based approach on virtual machines these days if it's in their own environment, because we all understand snapshots are a better way to do it. It's less disruptive and it gets the job done quicker. But of course, you know, that's one challenge. But we've developed an agent basically that will enable you to protect those cloud-based VMs in there. But of course, because it's an agent, it will also enable you to protect physical servers, because of course they're not really going anywhere, as well as virtual machines that might have raw device maps in them, for example. So if any of you have configured Microsoft failover clusters in a virtualized environment, you'll know that the RDMs present challenges for you when it comes time to back things up. So the agent can help address that. And then, of course, you've got laptops and tablets as well. So the solution to the problem is really the Veeam agents for Windows and Linux. So this is the next gen of Veeam Endpoint Backup Free. That's been out in the market for a couple of years now. So this is not version 1 software. But basically, the Veeam agent for Windows will include application awareness. So this is a key thing that the Endpoint product didn't do. Now, the Endpoint product will continue to exist. It will continue to be free, but because it's free, the SLAs are on a best efforts basis. And of course, our customers are looking for something that provides the same SLAs that we offer with Veeam Backup and Replication. So that's another advantage of the Veeam agents for Windows and Linux. It will help reduce cost and complexity, of course, whilst ensuring availability is maintained if those Windows and Linux instances are running in the cloud. You may very well also have workloads that are just not going to be virtualized. You know, if you've got a very important SQL database, it's quite an easy commercial case to make to buy a server for that. You know, it depends how much money the database makes quite often. But of course, it will also help you meet the RPOs that your business requires, as well as reduce the risk of data loss on those physical servers, cloud-based VMs, VMs locally with RDMs, and as well as, you know, other laptops and tablets, which may sit outside of the corporate network. So bear that in mind. If you have workloads today running in Azure and AWS, you'll want to get onto the Veeam website and take a look at the Veeam agents for Windows and Linux, because they can certainly provide you with a route to protect those workloads that live in those cloud environments where you can't access the hypervisor. Now, Cloud Connect is Veeam's own ecosystem, and we designed this from the ground up to really help address the problem which I've just described. And that problem is namely, you can't access the hypervisor. So, you know, we've just discussed that, you know, Veeam have tools in our kit bag that would enable you to deal with that problem, namely use an agent. But let's be honest, agents are an old approach to doing it. Yes, it gets the job done, but you have to consider deploying an agent inside of a cloud workload will ultimately use compute inside of that VM, and if you're paying per compute, then there is going to be a cost associated with that. Not to mention the fact that a lot of cloud environments, hyperscalers included, will actually charge you more to take data out than put it in, right? So they make it very easy for you to put the data into the environment, and then you get charged when you try to pull it out. And of course, you know, both of those things can conspire to make the cost of data protection in that cloud environment increase quite significantly over what you would expect if you were going to protect it locally. Not to mention the fact that, you know, the snapshot-based approach is just quicker and helps you meet your business's SLAs and RPOs as well. So Cloud Connect was designed by us, and in conjunction working with partners like Think S3, this has been deployed all over the globe. The principle is really very simple. You'll have a Veeam Cloud Gateway, or rather the guys at Think S3 have a Veeam Cloud Gateway. That's in their environment. And in essence, it's Veeam Backup and Replication as you understand it, as you know it. It's just that the license enables some additional multi-tenancy code. This is obviously important in cloud environments because, you know, you need to make sure that your data is, you know, stored in its own area. It's not next to anyone else's data. They're not going to be able to read information out of your backups, whether that's files or just even sort of high-level visibility and understanding that there's a VM with whatever name it has. So it's fully multi-tenanted. When you log into the Cloud Connect environment, and I'll show you that when we jump into the demo lab later, but you will only see your information. Okay, so it is fully multi-tenanted. Now, the idea here is to make it all very simple and easy for you to make use of this environment, right? So to that end, there's just a very simple wizard that you run through to add Think S3 in to your Veeam infrastructure. They'll provide you with the URL and a username and a password to connect. The connection process takes minutes. I mean, it's a doddle to get it set up. You're up and running within minutes, and then it just shows up in your interface as a repository, much like a repository would show up if it was sitting on your own disk. So then it's just a target, right? And you can start sending your backups to that target. Now, what can we do with it once it's stored up in there? Well, this is really the key thing about Cloud Connect. You can do exactly the same with it as you could if it was in your own environment, right? By that, I mean protection stays the same. You can use snapshots to protect those VMs on an ongoing basis if you have to fail over into a Cloud Connect environment. That's a huge difference, right? That's a real differentiator for Cloud Connect, right? This is modern data protection. It's not taking an agent-based approach that we were familiar with in the 90s and then trying to overlay it over cloud. This actually works the way you want the cloud to work. So by that, I mean you have the ability to restore individual files, much like you would do locally, as well as application items using all of the Veeam explorers that you may be familiar with, which just really help streamline the process of recovering those items. You can even do instant VM recoveries. I've not really touched on what an instant VM recovery is. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend you get along to YouTube. There's a few videos on there that show you what it is. But it really is one of the coolest features we've got. Just enables you to get any virtual machine of any size, whether it's 20 gig or 20 terabytes, back up and running and sitting at the login prompt in just 2 minutes. It's a great thing to have in your arsenal if you ever need to recover a virtual machine in a hurry. It's absolutely brilliant. So all of those features are still available in Cloud Connect. Now, when we released Cloud Connect in version 8, it was just purely for storing backup copy jobs. So you could take a backup. We would probably recommend locally. I mean, there's nothing stopping you backing up directly into the Cloud Connect environment, but there is a best practice. You guys may have heard of it. It's called the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3-2-1 rule just stipulates that you should really have 3 copies of your data, one of those being the production copy of the data, and that they should be on 2 different storage media, and that ideally one of those copies should be off-site. So 3-2-1. So backup copies were really the genesis for Cloud Connect, just really giving you the ability to store those backups off-site. But we didn't stop there. You remember I mentioned at the top, right? We do a lot more than just backup. We're about availability. So in version 9, we added Cloud Connect replication. Now, Cloud Connect replication just basically takes all of that functionality that I described at the beginning, a bit like SRM, okay, but it's just not relying on having the same hardware in either location because we're hardware agnostic, but in essence giving you the ability to replicate those virtual machines into that Cloud Connect environment so that you can actually mitigate against the potential damage that might be caused to your business from an entire site failure. You know, so a lot of customers, if they've got 2 sites themselves, will configure replication between those 2 sites. But if you don't, maybe there are costs associated with fitting out a server room, for example, there. You might actually find there's quite a compelling case. Talk to the guys at Think S3 and get your replicas sent up there. Now, of course, what happens if your site goes down? You don't actually have access to your own Veeam backup server at that point. Well, that's all built in. So there's something called the Cloud Connect portal. And again, I'll just show you this briefly when we jump into the demo lab. But in essence, that means that you've still got access to fail over your VMs, even if your own site and your own Veeam backup server is actually no longer there, because all of the failover mechanisms have been copied over. So you can still initiate them, even if you lose your own site. Okay. Now, bandwidth can sometimes be a limiting factor. Okay, obviously on our local area networks these days, we're looking pretty good, right? A lot of people I'm talking to these days are actually starting to go down the road of deploying 10 gig networks, you know, ridiculously fast. People are seeing speeds of, you know, 800, 900, even, you know, gigabyte per second speeds transferring backups these days. But obviously on wide area networks, you know, we're still a little way behind. So that's why we developed this solution, WAN Acceleration. Now, I should explain, WAN Acceleration, normally, if you're buying Veeam for your own site, WAN Acceleration is one of our top-tier Enterprise Plus features. Okay. With Cloud Connect, though, we took a view that really we need to bring that down a license level. So the great news for you is, if you consider going to Cloud Connect but bandwidth is a limiting issue, Veeam will actually enable WAN Acceleration at the enterprise level. So you don't necessarily need to go in at that top tier for Cloud Connect and WAN Acceleration. You can actually gain access to this functionality at a lower licensing level. So what does it do? Well, if you're familiar with WAN optimizing appliances out there, these sort of general purpose network appliances that you can stick in between your sites, they typically work by deduplicating network traffic. Okay, that's how they accelerate the transmission of data. They just send less data. Right. We do a similar sort of thing. So basically, we will analyze the backup copy or the replica. So whether it's a VBK file that we've written to disk or a replica VM we want to copy, we'll analyze it. We'll compare it against every single thing we've got in the local site. Then we'll compare it against everything we've got in the remote site. And we'll find duplicate data, and then basically just send the unique blocks over to the remote site to ensure that we get that data over there in a timely fashion. Okay. So WAN Acceleration can be included at a lower level. It's also worth mentioning encryption. Of course, you know, encryption is a key concern for a lot of people when they're storing data in the cloud. They want to make sure, you know, that it couldn't be accessed by anyone else. So yeah, we can do that too. We use AES 256-bit. So we use a very nice, strong algorithm to do that encryption. And we can encrypt in flight, so just transmitting it over the WAN to get it into the Cloud Connect environment. Or these days you can actually encrypt it at rest as well. So it's a fully thought out end-to-end solution for getting your backups and also your replicas off-site to keep your information available no matter what happens. And like I said, that works with both replicas and backup copies. So let me, we'll just jump out of the slides and we will jump into the demo lab for a moment. So let me just introduce you to the Veeam backup and replication console. So like I said at the top, fair to say this is the product that really made our name as a company. So it's really a leader in the data protection space these days. And it's got a very simple interface. So up at the top here, we've got a ribbon, a bit like Office 2003. And then there's a left-hand pane, right-hand pane. So, you know, very simple, intuitive stuff. So if I click on things in the left, then it changes what I see in the right, and so on. And then a bit like Outlook, actually, I often think, down in the bottom here, you've got some different pages that you can whiz through in the Veeam console. This is very easy to install. Typically, installing Veeam backup and replication takes somewhere between sort of 10 and 15 minutes. You just need to put a database underneath it. But once it's up and running, you can then start building out your Veeam environment. And it's very scalable. We don't charge you for the backup servers that you deploy. Once you buy Veeam backup and replication, you can deploy it once or 100 times. Commercially speaking, it makes no difference to us. So you can always deploy the right number of servers to get the job done. But once it's up and running, you can start adding additional servers into it through the backup infrastructure page here. So backup and replication is where you'll do all of your day-to-day stuff, configure backup jobs, replication jobs, do restores, and so on. Backup infrastructure is where you can build the environment out. Virtual machines is where you would go to add in virtual machines to a particular backup job or browse through them. But you can also do that from within the backup job wizard itself. Storage infrastructure enables you to add any supported SANs into the mix there. So there's a few names that Liam mentioned at the top. So it's worth mentioning that if you guys are running EMC, HP, NetApp, Nimble Storage, IBM coming online in version 10, and also actually Cisco HyperFlex in the next update for version 9.5. But yeah, basically you can add those storage arrays in there, and then we can offload the snapshot process to those, and also actually work with snapshots that might already exist in there. So you can actually almost use Veeam as kind of the recovery console sitting on top of the NetApp, for example. Tape infrastructure just enables you to add tape into the mix. Becoming less popular these days, but you know, I don't think tape will ever die fully. Ultimately, a storage medium that's that cheap, doesn't require power and cooling, and has the sort of capacities it does, will always make sense for very long-term retention. So tape can be added into the mix there. Files, well, files just enables you to browse through the files that make up the virtual machines and so on. And then history is logs. Okay, so you can go in and view the logs on your backup jobs and so on in there. So that's a brief whistle-stop tour of the interface. We like to think, you know, it's very simple, very intuitive, very easy to use. So, like I said, you can back up directly to Cloud Connect. Okay, that is possible. It's possible here with Veeam backup and replication. It's also going to be possible with the Veeam agent for Windows as soon as that comes out. So one of the cool features in there is it's got a backup cache. And basically what that means is if, let's say you installed the Veeam agent for Windows on some of the sales guys' laptops, right? So they're roaming, they're nomadic types, they're not in the office that often. So they might not necessarily have an internet connection on that laptop all the time. Well, you can basically configure a backup schedule, and if the Cloud Connect environment isn't available, it will back itself up locally to the folder you specify in the wizard. And then basically once the Cloud Connect environment becomes visible again, so the next time they pop into one of your offices and connect to the Wi-Fi, it will start uploading that backup into the Cloud Connect environment. Okay, so yeah, you could back up directly to Cloud Connect. The way they've actually got it configured here in the lab is more akin to what we would recommend with the 3-2-1 rule, right? So we just covered off the 3-2-1 rule. We know what that is. But basically, put this in context with Cloud Connect, we would typically recommend you back up locally. So give yourself a Veeam backup file or a VBK locally that you could recover from, and then also put a copy of that in the cloud so that, you know, if there's a problem with your backup target, for example, maybe there's a problem with the RAID array, you've got that copy in another location. So we've configured it to do thus, but you can see here basically looking at the backup jobs, we've got this target column over here. So you can see there's all sorts of different targets that we could be working with. Okay, so we can send them to sort of backup repositories which you've configured locally, which might be on sort of local disks, NAS drives, that kind of thing. But we can also, as I said, work with snapshots that you might have in your NetApps and so on. So what we would typically do is if we go to backup copy, so what a backup copy does is it just takes that VBK file and puts it elsewhere. We've got some backup copies here that we can see are doing that. So for example, this one right at the top of the list is taking some Hyper-V VMs, and that's just placing that up in Cloud Connect. So let's have a look at the properties of the job here. So it's very, very straightforward and simple to configure. First up, you just give it a name. Tell it how frequently you want it to copy that backup. So for example, if your backup schedule is daily, then you probably want your backup copy schedule to be daily. But if you're backing up every 4 hours, likewise, you probably want to configure the backup job to operate a little quicker. So then you'll just add virtual machines into the backup copy job, much like we do with a backup job actually. But one of the key differences on a backup copy job is you can actually change where you're picking those from. So they could be picked directly from the infrastructure itself. So you could actually call them out as in, you know, this virtual machine with this no-ref ID. Or you could go from the backups, so browse through backups, maybe take an entire backup job if you want every virtual machine in that backup, or you can go from jobs, and jobs just enables you to cherry pick virtual machines from different backup jobs. So if you wanted 5 virtual machines from backup job 1, 10 virtual machines from backup job 2, then you might want to choose that option there. So once you've added what it is you want copied in there, you just go to target, And here you can see it's pointing at a simple cloud repository. Okay. Now, one of the nice things about backup copy jobs is you get the ability to do GFS over and above on top of that. So for those of you not familiar, GFS just stands for grandfather, father, son. It's a best practice in backup, which just states that you should change the retentions on different backups. So for example, keep your dailies for 7 days, keep weekly backups for 4 weeks, keep monthly backups for 6 months, and maybe keep your yearly backups for 7 years, maybe. So you can define the sort of the criteria that you'll define around weekly backups here. So if you just click on schedule, you can say, okay, you know, I want my weeklies to be considered the first Sunday of the week or a particular day of the month and so on. So you can kind of define exactly what the criteria are for weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, yearlies in there. Then you'll get some information around the data transfer. So, you know, I mentioned WAN acceleration earlier on. This is where you can define how that works. So if you go direct, there'll be no WAN acceleration. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a gigabit network, great. Do you know what? You probably wouldn't need WAN acceleration. But if you're down at the sort of, you know, your 10, 20, 50 meg mark, then, you know, you might want to just enable WAN accelerators there. And you can see, obviously, because this one's going to the cloud, it's pre-populated the target WAN accelerator. Yeah, so it knows about the WAN accelerator at the other side. So again, very simple, very easy to use. I mean, it's not a product where you find yourself rummaging through the manual trying to figure out how things work. We like to take a lot of the guesswork out of it. So then at the end, we just get to the schedule. Here you can actually specify particular times of the day maybe that you don't want it working. So you might, for example, say, I don't know, let's say Monday to Friday 9 to 5. You might go, right, I don't, well, that's 9 to 4, but you get the gist. You could say, okay, I don't want this to be working at that time of day. It also works on rows and columns, so, you know, very simple and easy to use, but yeah, I won't change any of the configuration because the guys that manage the demo lab won't be very happy with me, but you get the idea. So that's how you can configure the backup copy job to get into the Cloud Connect environment. Now, if you don't see backup copies when you look at your Veeam interface today, that's because we only add options in the side here once they've been configured. Again, we like to keep the interface very clean, very simple, and very easy to use. So if you don't see backup copies and you want to configure one, just go up to Jobs, and then you'll find the backup copy option just up here. Equally, if you right-click in the sort of white space over on this side, you'll get the same option. But yeah, probably the easiest way to get to that is just to go to Jobs. Now, let's take a quick look at the process of actually adding a service provider in the first place. So you remember I said that backup infrastructure is where we go to configure the Veeam infrastructure. So we can add additional backup servers in here. We can add additional repositories if we're running out of disk space and we need to add some additional disk shelves in locally. And we can also add our service providers in here as well. So if I just click on service providers, we've just got a few here that we've configured in our own. Yes, you're actually getting some additional options here that the service provider would see. You wouldn't necessarily see that at your end. But basically, you'll just give it a name. As I said, you know, the service provider, Think S3, will provide you with credentials that you'll need to log in there with. And that's pretty much it. There's not a hell of a lot to configure there. But once that's done, you can then start making use of that Cloud Connect environment. So we've covered how we configure a backup copy job, or indeed a backup job for that matter. Bear in mind, on a backup job, it's a similar process. You're just specifying the cloud repository as the initial target rather than a subsequent target. But we've looked at how we configure the backup jobs. We've looked at how we can add that service provider in. So yeah, let's just take a quick look at the Veeam Cloud Connect portal. So this is what a Veeam Cloud Connect portal looks like. Now, again, this is our own internal lab here, so it's all a lovely shade of green, but if you log into Think S3's, then that'll be branded up in the corner there. But basically, if I just log in here, just bear with me just a second. It has logged me out since I came in this morning. I'll just say, remember me. I can log in. And of course, because this is a web-based portal, it's accessible from anywhere, right? So it doesn't matter what disaster befell you, how severe it was, you can still access your failover plan using the Veeam Cloud Connect portal. Now, in this particular instance, this one has actually just got a failover plan listed. So failover plans work with replication jobs. So the idea here is all of your virtual machines are off because your main site's down. You can log in here and literally just highlight the failover plan there. That will then light up the start button, and off you go, right? So what is a failover plan? Well, if we come back to the Veeam Backup and Replication console, I can actually show you. So if we go in here, underneath replicas here, you see, so we've configured some replication jobs in the first instance. Obviously, that's a prerequisite here. So you've got the replication jobs which have copied virtual machines from one environment to another. But once you've got those and they've been copied from one environment to another, you can start building failover plans. And failover plans just basically take all of the replicas that you've configured. So for example, here we can see there are 25 virtual machines in this particular failover plan. But in essence, the failover plan is kind of the run order for your DR. So you give it a name. If you need pre or post scripts, you can insert those here as well. And then basically you just configure all of the different virtual machines that you want to be failed over, the order that you want them to be failed over in. If you need any delays inserted in there as well, you can see there's some delays in here. So for example, 60 seconds. You can input those as well. So let's say, for example, the domain controller is quite often one of the first workloads that gets failed over into that environment. Okay. When you boot up an Active Directory domain controller, they can sometimes take a little while longer to boot than other VMs, right? Because there's a lot of directory services need to start and so on. And if you consider Exchange, let's say you've still got Exchange running inside of a VM, well, the Active Directory domain controller would be a prerequisite for Exchange even booting. Exchange just won't boot if it doesn't find a domain controller in the same network segment as it. So failover plans really are sort of your DR runbook, you know, just figure out exactly what order you want stuff to be failed over in. If there are any dependencies, take those into account. If there are any delays required, then you can input those in here. But then it really just turns it into a simple case of, if I want to initiate that failover plan and fail over all of these workloads, it's as simple as right-click on the replicas and just fail over now. Okay, so, you know, very simple and easy to use. And basically what you're seeing in the Veeam Cloud Connect portal here is the failover plan that's been configured. So it copied the failover plan to the Cloud Connect environment with the replicas, okay, so that if you lose your site, it still works. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour, really. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover today in terms of the demo. Hopefully that's giving you some insight into how the whole thing hangs together. So if we just take a little look at the chat window here, there don't seem to be any questions in there just yet. So I don't know, maybe I did an awesome job of explaining it all, but please, if you have any questions about licensing, about how that actually works in your specific environment with your specific workloads, please do feel free to throw those in there. Liam, did you have anything to add at that point?
No, really, just a thank you from myself, Russell, for running the webinar and taking us through that live lab. Obviously, we work very closely with Veeam, delivering into our cloud on Cloud Connect. We have, as Russell said there, we have our own portal, which you'll recognise if you use it with us. We have our own lovely shade of green that we use. So if there are any questions, if there's any questions that come up after the event as you go away and you have a think about how Veeam Cloud Connect might work with your backups and your environments, obviously you can get in touch with this on the telephone number or via email there. Please follow us on Twitter at think_S3. We'll be releasing more webinars of this nature, so you can keep up to date with new releases such as the Veeam agent for Windows version 10 when it comes out, and all the other areas that we work within. So have one little last check in the chat and see if there's any questions that have cropped up. So that looks good. So yeah, so it's a very much a thank you for your attendance. We do appreciate it. Thank you, Russell, for giving us your time this morning and presenting. There we go. I think we're no question seems to have come in, so we'll draw this presentation to a close. And I said, yeah, if there's any questions at all that anybody's got, you can reach us on the telephone number there, 0845 686 0530, or at sales@thinkS3. Thank you.